I can still hear the sound the envelope made when I tore it open. Just a faint rip, paper against paper, but in that moment, it was louder than a gunshot. For years, I had built my entire identity around one word, Dad. The little voices calling my name in the morning. The handmade cards on Father's Day. The messy drawings pinned to the fridge that said, "I love you, Daddy." That word was my pride, my joy, my reason for living. But inside that envelope, in black and white, was a single line that detonated my world. Paternity, 0%. I blinked. My hand shook. My vision blurred, as if the letters themselves were mocking me. I read it again. And again. Hoping the numbers would magically change. But they didn't. My kids were laughing in the next room, their voices full of innocence. They had no idea that the man they adored, the man who taught them to ride bikes, held their hands when they were scared, kissed them goodnight, was being erased by a piece of paper. I wanted to scream, to tear the walls down, to confront the betrayal immediately. But instead, I just sat there in silence. Because how do you breathe when your entire life is suffocating you? This wasn't just about betrayal. It wasn't just about DNA. This was about losing the only identity that ever truly mattered to me. And I knew one thing, this fight had only just begun. If you've ever believed family is more than blood, stick with me. Because this story isn't just about DNA, it's about what truly makes someone a parent. Before the test, my life looked like any other father's. My morning started before the sun, packing lunches while the kids argued over who got the bigger slice of toast. I drove them to school, one always singing off-key in the back seat, the other staring out the window with dreams far too big for their age. Weekends were chaos, sports practices, birthday parties, grocery runs. Yet, even in exhaustion, I felt fulfilled. At night, when the house finally went quiet, I'd peek into their rooms and see them sprawled out in bed, peaceful and safe. Those moments were everything. I wasn't a perfect dad, but I was present. I showed up, whether it was for scraped knees or school projects due the next morning. My wallet may not have been fat, but my time, my energy, and my heart were all invested in them. I thought parenthood was simple math, love plus sacrifice equals family. But I was about to learn that sometimes, the math doesn't add up. Their mother and I weren't perfect either. Arguments over bills, long hours at work, and the everyday grind tested us. Still, I never doubted her loyalty, or the kids' place as mine. If you asked me back then what I was most proud of, I would have said, without hesitation, being their dad. I carried that identity like a badge of honor. Little did I know, the foundation of that identity was built on a secret I never saw coming. The road to that DNA test wasn't planned. It began innocently, during a routine doctor's visit. One of the kids needed blood work, and the nurse mentioned something about blood type. At first, I dismissed it, what did I know about genetics? But that small mismatch planted a seed. Later, the thought kept circling in my head. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just medical error. Still, I couldn't silence it. Then one night, while hanging out with friends, someone cracked a joke, "Man, you sure those kids are yours?" Everyone laughed. I forced a smile. Inside, I froze. That joke hit the nerve the doctor had already touched. I couldn't shake it anymore. So I ordered a test. Quietly. Privately. I told myself it was just for reassurance. That when the results came back, I'd feel foolish for ever doubting. That I'd tear the paper, toss it away, and hug my kids tighter. But instead, that test was the beginning of my undoing. When the email arrived that the results were ready, my stomach churned. I stared at my laptop screen for hours before clicking open. And when I finally printed the report, I knew my life was about to split in two, the life before those words, and the life after. I wanted reassurance. What I got was betrayal, silence, and a storm that would drag me into the fight of my life. That night, after the kids went to bed, I laid the paper on the kitchen table. My wife walked in, and her smile faded the moment she saw it. "What's this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You tell me," I said, my chest tight, my throat burning. Her eyes flicked over the words, and I watched color drain from her face. There was no denial. No attempt at confusion. Just silence. Finally, she sat down, staring at her hands. "I didn't think it mattered," she murmured. "Didn't matter?" The words echoed like thunder. I slammed my hand against the table. "Didn't matter? You let me raise them, love them, believe they were mine, and you think it doesn't matter?" Tears welled in her eyes. She confessed to a brief affair. A mistake, she called it. She insisted she never meant for the truth to come out, that she believed I was a better father than the biological one ever could have been. But mistakes don't last a decade. Mistakes don't become children who call me dad. I felt betrayed, gutted, stripped of my very identity. But beyond my anger, I felt fear. Fear for the kids. How do I explain this to them? I asked. How do I tell them the man they know as their father isn't really their father? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Trust had shattered. In that moment, I knew forgiveness wouldn't erase this. Love wouldn't undo it. And silence wasn't an option. If I didn't fight, I could lose everything. If you were in my shoes, would you fight to stay in their lives? Comment stay if yes, or walk if no. The next morning, I sat in a lawyer's office, my head spinning. The walls were lined with books, but I was focused only on the man across from me. After I explained, he leaned back, folded his hands, and said words that chilled me more than the test itself. "Legally, you may not have rights." He explained the harsh reality. In family law, biology carries weight. But there were gray areas. Best interest of the child, he said. If I had been the only father figure, the court could acknowledge that bond. But then came the catch. Even if the court declared I wasn't the biological father, I might still be held responsible for child support. Imagine that, stripped of the title dad, yet chained to the financial obligations. My head spun. So what do I do? He laid it out: court filings, custody petitions, affidavits. The process would be grueling. My life would be dissected, finances, character, every detail laid bare. I left his office with a stack of papers and a heavier heart. But one thing was clear. If I didn't fight, I'd lose them completely. Court wasn't glamorous. It was sterile hallways, endless paperwork, and long waits that drained every ounce of patience. When our case was called, I felt the weight of the room press down. Her lawyer argued science was undeniable: he is not the father. But my lawyer countered with passion. He has been the only father these children know. Biology doesn't erase a decade of love. The judge listened, expression unreadable. Then came reports, guardian interviews, school letters, even neighbors called to testify about my role. Every detail of my life was under scrutiny. Did I attend school events? Did I provide financial stability? Did I show emotional support? It was exhausting, humiliating even. But worse was the fear: what if all my efforts still weren't enough? During recess, I'd sit on a bench outside, watching real families walk by, dads holding kids' hands, moms juggling toddlers. I wondered if I was about to become an outsider in my own children's lives. If you're still with me, hit that like button. It shows me you're riding through this storm with me. The court battle stretched for months. And every day, the question loomed: would DNA erase fatherhood, or would love and presence prove stronger? In between hearings, I wrestled with myself. The court saw me as a legal question. But I was a man torn in half. If I accepted the test, I could walk away, start fresh, build a new life. No financial ties. No legal battles. Freedom. But freedom came with a cost: abandoning the kids who still called me dad. Then came the financial blow. The court suggested I could still be required to pay support. Equitable relief, they called it. Fancy words that meant money, even if I wasn't their father on paper. I felt trapped. How could I be both not the father and financially responsible? Late at night, I'd stare at their baby photos, memories flashing like a movie reel. First steps. First words. First day of school. None of those moments cared about DNA. Money fades. Labels change. But fatherhood? That was written into my soul. The final hearing came faster than I expected. I stood before the judge, my stomach churning. He acknowledged the truth, biologically, I was not the father. But then he paused, flipping through documents. However, he said, the court also recognizes the psychological and emotional bond. In the ruling, I was granted visitation rights. Child support was adjusted but not erased. It wasn't full victory. But it wasn't total loss either. After court, I sat in my car, staring at the papers. No cheering crowd, no celebration. Just silence. I thought about what makes a father. Is it DNA? A surname? Or is it the countless nights spent holding a crying child, the sacrifices made without question, the love that doesn't waver? For me, the answer was clear. Fatherhood isn't defined by chromosomes, it's defined by commitment. I may not share their blood, but I will always share their memories, their milestones, their laughter. If you believe fatherhood is more than DNA, share this story. Subscribe for more real family drama stories every day. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes, it drags you to court.